Of quorum. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to advise anyone who is sitting in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they are in airplane mode, and that all devices should be muted, and it's not permitted to take photographs or record any part of the meeting. In terms of apologies, we have one apology from Daniel, and we have one member attending via Zoom. Is any member aware of any other apologies? No? Okay. Members, I'm going to ask for declarations of interest on any of the matters on the agenda today. Michelle? I have a declaration to declare, I suppose. I'm Honorary Associate of the BBA. Okay.
I declare an interest in the Honorary Associate to the BBA and partner in a business, agricultural business.
Brilliant. Thank you, William. Okay, members?
Executor and owner of small farm.
Thank you, Declan. Okay. Agenda item 3 is Chairperson's business. Members, I refer you to page 6 of the pack to correspondence from the Northern Ireland Fishermen's Federation, NIF and NIFPO, regarding the impacts of the current International Council for the Exploration of the Seas, otherwise known as ICES, and advice for Irish sea herring on the fishing industry in Northern Ireland, which they believe is flawed and will be catastrophic for the industry. They state that if the 2026 advice is followed, the total allowable catch will have a further 29% cut, which will represent a cumulative cut of over 2 years of 61%, or a total loss of £6.1 million compared with the average value during the period 2018 to 2024. Members, this is a matter that the committee has taken a keen interest in. You will recall last week we considered the announcement of the £360 million fishing and coastal growth fund allocation, of which, disappointingly, only £10 million of the initial tranche has been earmarked for Northern Ireland, which does not adequately reflect Northern Ireland's overall contribution to the UK fishing effort. The committee agreed last week to invite the Federation to brief the committee to hear in more detail their ongoing concerns. Members, anything to add at this point? We will be hearing from them at an agreed point in the near future. Okay, members? Item number 2, regarding the matter of the US trade tariffs. Prior to summer recess, we considered to raise briefing paper titled the US trade tariffs, key changes and initial considerations for Northern Ireland. The committee agreed to revisit the paper following summer recess. So are members content that we ask Raise for a further update, and then we can examine that? Thank you, members. Item number 3, I refer you to page 27 of table papers to the announcement from the Office of Environmental Protection that it is investigating DAERA, along with the Department of Infrastructure and the Utility Regulator, over the regulation of sewage discharges into Belfast Lough. This is the 4th OEP investigation in Northern Ireland, and it focuses on whether there has been a failure to comply with environmental law, regulating how untreated wastewater is being discharged. Do members have any comments at this stage? I know that the committee will follow the investigation closely, but it was good to listen to the OEP representative on the radio and being made fully aware of some of the serious concerns that have been raised previously. I know in plenary and in previous member statements about that unregulated discharge. So are members content that we will monitor this and perhaps even, I would suggest, maybe writing to the Department, the Minister, even for an update in regard to that, as to any actions that the Minister is taking? Would that be okay? Members content with that? Yeah. Thank you, members. Agenda item 4, minutes of the meeting on the 20th of November. I refer you to the draft minutes from our meeting dated the 20th of November, which start at page 11 of your pack. If you have any comments, or are you content with the minutes as drafted? And if so, I will sign them for publishing on the website. Okay, I'll sign them. Thank you. Okay, what is it? All day. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 5 is matters arising. Members, refer you to page 21 of the pack to correspondence from the Department dated the 19th of November regarding an update on the highly pathogenic avian influenza. Members raised concerns about compensation as the current restrictions coincide with the peak Christmas period that will significantly impact flock owners' annual revenue. In response, the Department states it's only payable for birds culled at the Department's direction and is not paid for consequential losses caused by control measures such as lost sales opportunities. The Department also states that there are no plans for the introduction of a broader financial support package. Members, we last considered the latest developments regarding the HPAI at our meeting on the 6th of November. Since then, the avian influenza was confirmed at 2 commercial poultry premises near Pomeroy and Lisnaskea on the 7th of November, resulting in the temporary control zones increasing to 3-kilometre protection zones, which is an escalation, and 10-kilometre surveillance zones around each infected premises. A further case was detected in a small backyard flock near Bangor, and a temporary control zone was established on the 13th of November. Officials have now completed full depopulation of all infected sites. All restrictions have now been lifted at a poultry premises outside of Omagh following the conclusion of disease control activities. HPAI has been confirmed in wild birds across 4 locations in Northern Ireland, which represent the first confirmed wild bird positives since July. And since the 1st of October, there have been approximately 250 confirmed cases of avian influenza across the EU and over 40 cases in Great Britain. Members, any comments on that? Are you content to note? Content to note. Thank you, members. Item number 2, I refer you to pages 27 to 31 of the pack, to the Department briefing paper on the Environmental Principles Policy Statement. The draft statement starts at page 32 of your packs. Following approval by the Executive on the 6th of November, it was led on the 20th of November, and the scrutiny period of 21 sitting days then commenced. Clearly, with 2 sittings a week and a Christmas recess on the horizon, the scrutiny period extends into the spring. The scrutiny period is unusual but specified in the Environmental Act 2021. So I don't propose to consider it further today, as we will have an oral briefing on the 4th of December, and members will have the opportunity to ask questions then. Have you any comments, members? Are you content to note that? Thank you. Item number 3, refer to page 4 of the table papers to a response from the Department dated the 25th of November regarding the DAERA Bee Inspectorate. You will recall we contacted the Department following our briefing from the Ulster Beekeepers Association on the 13th of November. The Department states it does not employ dedicated bee inspectors. However, it provides training in bee inspections to the number of staff necessary to meet legislative obligations. It is the obligation of the beekeeper under legislation to monitor their apiaries and notify the Department should they know or suspect the presence of a notifiable disease or pest, and there are regular updates on the honeybee health web pages, including a disease outbreak map. Recruitment is ongoing to ensure DAERA maintains its overall inspector capacity. However, current resourcing pressures do not allow for additional apiary surveillance beyond statutory duties. The Department continues to monitor risk, including from bee diseases, and undertakes inspections accordingly. Contingencies are in place to deal with significant outbreaks, including the temporary use of staff from across the Department and from other organisations if required. As regards funding or associated support for the International Meeting of Young Beekeepers in Belfast in 2026, officials are happy to discuss this at their next scheduled meeting with the UBKA in early December. Members, it is nice that we end with hopeful news regarding the Meeting of Young Beekeepers. Have members any other comments? Are you content to note? I am slightly confused as I read this in regard to some of the, we were, I'm sure as individual MLAs, we were contacting committee about the loss of bee inspectors. The Department have cleared that up a little bit by saying that they don't have, possibly never did have, dedicated bee inspectors, but I don't think this answers the question as into what the current situation is with those inspectors who have the requisite experience in bee inspections and how that is resourced at the moment. And I know in a briefing later on in and around vacancies across the Department, this might be an area where this is impacting. So I think I would like to see a wee bit more information about the current status of inspectors that have the requisite qualification or training in bee inspectorate, and what the level the Department aims to maintain and what that looks like. Would members be content with that? Yep. Thank you, members. Okay, item number 5.
Chair, is that a letter, or are we going to raise that with the...
Yes, a letter. No, we'll get that. We'll just go with the letter on that one. Yep. Okay. Item number 4, members, I refer you to pages 9 to 17 of the table papers to a summary of the informal Nutrients Action Programme event that we held at the Stormont Hotel on the 13th of November. As the event was primarily to allow committee members to hear from a range of stakeholders, officials only took notes, and these are summarised in the paper. It appears it was seen to be a positive event, and key themes raised in feedback suggested that the two broad sectors can work together, and appreciated the time spent discussing the issues. Are members content that the committee forward the summary to both the Task and Finish Group and to stakeholders for information? The committee will return to this issue and consider next steps in the near future. Any comments to make, members? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, members, agenda item 6 is the written briefing from the NIA EU Affairs Manager Supply of Veterinary Medicines to Northern Ireland. That is in your pack, starting at page 69 for the paper from Fergal McGuinness, the Assembly EU Affairs Manager. Members, you will be aware that the grace period for distribution of veterinary medicines from GB into Northern Ireland ends on the 31st of December. Members are of course aware that this is a role for the Democratic Scrutiny Committee rather than the statutory committees to examine and consider proposed new EU acts and proposed and published replacement of said EU acts. But statutory committees such as ours will of course continue to consider EU exit related issues that fall within the functions of our department. This might include engagement on policy development and the scrutiny of the implementation of those EU acts. Members, so with that in mind, we agreed it would be of benefit to receive a written briefing on the matter. This paper is timely given the new process coming in on the 1st of January next year, and we will hear from NIVA next. If members seek additional detail on non-procedural aspects, we can seek further information from the Assembly research. Members, the UK Government expects any disruption to supply to be highly limited. However, the veterinary and animal health sectors have raised concerns over potential impacts given the lack of information around which products may be discontinued when the new rules take effect. The member provides background information alongside some possible lines of inquiry for the committee should members wish to investigate further. There will be a copy of a letter from the House of Lords NI Scrutiny Committee dated yesterday to the Minister for the Cabinet Office in the pack next week. The letter asks further questions on this topic, including whether the Government is satisfied that the proposed arrangements are consistent with the terms of Article 16 of the Protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland. The committee will be copied into the response. Members, have you any comments before we continue to consider the topic of veterinary medicines with the briefing? Content? Okay, agenda item 7 is the oral briefing from NIVA. Now refer you to the table of papers on page 19 for their review of 2024 and its vision for 2025. Morning. So, members, I'm just going to welcome the following NIVA representatives to brief the committee and answer any questions that you may have. We have Ms. Kirsten Dunbar, who is the President, and we have Mr. Mark Little, the Honorary Secretary and past President. So members, just for your information, Kirsten and Mark have recently gave evidence to the House of Lords, Northern Ireland's Scrutiny Committee, so we'll be really well versed on the issues. The committee is grateful for you attending today at such short notice, and we appreciate you didn't have time to prepare a full written brief, but members will have seen a copy of your newsletter, which briefly mentions vet medicines, and so I'd be grateful if you could spend a few minutes detailing your thoughts on the change to the medicine supply from the 1st of January before members then maybe ask some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Mark is going to kick off with a bit of background here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with a bit of background and Kirsten will go on about some of the concerns. So I've been working on this for quite a few years now. Since Brexit, really the supply of veterinary medicines to Northern Ireland has been governed by a different regulatory framework than the rest of the UK. Under the Northern Ireland Protocol, now the Windsor framework, Northern Ireland must follow EU veterinary medicine rules, while Great Britain follows the UK rules. This is a divergence, and it creates a unique and complex set of challenges for us here. To avoid immediate disruption, there was a temporary grace period being in place since January 2021. And there was a lot of lobbying on behalf of the North of Ireland Veterinary Association and the British Veterinary Association Northern Irish branch to get to that point. And that really avoided the cliff edge, which was going to take place in January 2021. This has allowed the continued GB authorised veterinary medicine to continue to be supplied to Northern Ireland, even though GB is no longer part of the regulatory system. And as a result, vets, farmers, pet owners in Northern Ireland have so far largely had normal access to veterinary medicines. Now, there has been some little bits of discontinuation, but that is the normal rise and fall and issues which normally happens with supply of veterinary medicines. But to date, we've had the normal supply of veterinary medicine, so we haven't really seen anything yet. However, the extension of the grace period ends 31st of December 2025. So from 1st of January, GB authorised medicines can no longer be supplied into Northern Ireland unless they meet the full EU regulatory requirements. Now, what is the difference? That involves a marketing authorisation holder, with an address located in EU or Northern Ireland. Now, what is the marketing authorisation holder? If you open a pack of, I'll give an example, you open a pack of paracetamol and you have this data sheet which everyone takes out and throws in recycling. At the bottom of that, there's an address. So that's the address is the marketing authorisation holder. If that address is not in Europe, and if it has a GB address, it's not allowed to be used in Northern Ireland. And also rebatch testing of product in the EU. There has been a long-standing tried and tested for 20, 30 plus years supply of veterinary medicines into Northern Ireland. Even if they're made in Europe, they're generally warehoused in somewhere in GB. And if, of course, GB now being outside the EU, it's classified as a third country. So therefore, if it comes back into Northern Ireland, it has to be re-batch tested. What does batch testing mean? That means a recheck to make sure that everything is the way it is. Every batch of veterinary medicines and which is manufactured is what's called batch tested to make sure that what's on the label is what's in the pack. So the fact that it comes through GB and lands in the GB warehouse, it has to be rechecked to make sure that what's in the pack is what it says as well. So actually many pharmaceutical companies have redirected that trade through the Republic of Ireland to avoid that. So they can rebatch test, but that's a significant cost. So they've redirected trade through the Republic of Ireland. So for many manufacturers, Northern Ireland actually is a very small market. Agriculture is a really important part of the economy in Northern Ireland, but for the pharmaceutical companies, it's a small market. Additional costs to change this marketing authorisation holder, additional costs to change the routing of products, and regulatory burden means that some products will not be maintained or they may drop off certain pack sizes. Over the past year, industry has begun to reveal the impact. Up until then, we've been largely in the dark. But so far, out of all the pharmaceutical companies, only 3 of them have actually let us know what they're going to do. One of them says going to continue to supply as normal, no change. The other 2 have provided lists of discontinuations, products they're going to discontinue, or SKUs, stock keeping units. For example, if something comes in a half litre, 1 litre, 2.5 litre, 5 litre, they'll say we're going to drop off certain sizes. So that amounts to between 30 and 40% of their stock keeping units, SKUs being withdrawn. These early signals already exceed the UK government's modelling and their research, which assumes that only a small amount of products would be affected. The other companies, we just do not know. Actually, the Veterinary Medicine Director do know. They do have a list of discontinuations. The way they have gathered that list, they've went to pharmaceutical companies and said, can you tell us what you're being discontinued? But the only way they've managed to get that information is by saying, we'll be confidential, we'll not pass it on. And I understand the way they've gathered that information. So they've gathered that information, but as vets who are on the ground, we're sitting here at the end of November, we still don't know what's going to happen. So many companies, if they're not still finalising the decisions, they do know the decisions, but on the ground we don't know what's going to happen. I must say the UK government has been working hard and have created 2 schemes to try to continue the supply of veterinary medicines. The Veterinary Medicines Internal Market Scheme, which allows Northern Irish vets to prescribe GB authorised veterinary medicines where an EU equivalent doesn't exist. or is not available in the right quantities. And the Veterinary Medicine Health Situation Scheme provides access during disease outbreaks and in emergencies or urgent welfare needs. And these schemes were negotiated through the Veterinary Medicines Working Group, which the two of us sit on, led by Baroness Heyman, and are very helpful in principle. However, they're designed on the assumption of the MD work that there's only going to be a small amount of products discontinued and will only be used in very few occasions. If we take my example that some pharmaceutical companies have shown more discontinuations than the Veterinary Medicines Directorate work, we're worried that these schemes may not be workable in practice. And they also place significant liability on vets to use them, and because they talk about reasonable clinical discretion and note-taking, so we're worried about that as well. In addition, communication to frontline vets has been very limited. Representative bodies such as ourselves have had engagement with the VMD and DAERA as well, but no direct communication has gone to practitioners in Northern Ireland. We are aware there's going to be guidance available, and this will be available potentially in webinars, potentially just on websites with a webinar available on the website that you can look. But again, we're at the end of November, ready for this change. I must stress today, if you're going to ask, what's the situation today, we're still very, very stable. We're still within the grace period. The supply of veterinary medicines is still taking place. I can't say we've an issue with A, B and C because it doesn't really exist out there. But we're worried about this gradual deterioration throughout 2026, rising costs, reduced choice of this first-line medicines, reduced pack sizes, increased pressure. If you've reduced choice and different pack sizes, you may have to get more medicine than you need, or smaller pack sizes, increased pressure on antimicrobial resistance or antiparasite resistance. So in summary, before passing to Kirsten, we're approaching this major regulatory change very, very soon with almost incomplete information. The blinkers are still on for vets on the ground. Communication and guidance has been limited as well, and growing evidence that maybe the scale of discontinuation is greater than the Veterinary Medicine Directorate is telling us. So the next 12 months will be a significant risk and uncertainty to animal health, to farming, to pet owners, because of the supply of veterinary medicines to Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just going to take over from Mark and talk a little about the concerns that we have, and they fall under sort of three main headings. One is confidence, and really that's lack of confidence. One is costs, and the other is communication. So figures supplied by government say that there will be about 10 to 15% of products discontinued, and that about 20 of those products I think it's now less than 20 of those products will be discontinued are critical products. Again, we don't know what those are. So there's still uncertainty in which products will remain available and how schemes will work in practice. A number of pharmaceutical companies haven't yet given details of their plans, so we've heard from 3. Again, we're told by VMD that many have now applied to amend their marketing authorisations. So, as Mark was saying, they're changing from GB addresses to EU addresses. But again, we're told that that's no guarantee they are going to continue to supply in Northern Ireland, many of them hanging on to these marketing authorisations for intellectual property reasons. Again, the Veterinary Medicines Internal Market Scheme is very catchy. VMIMS has been designed to deal with small numbers of requests. So again, we're uncertain as to how that's going to work. There could also be unintended consequences from these discontinuation of products, particular products in certain areas, and I'll just give you one example of those. So there is one treatment which has been discontinued that treats lice, is a treatment for lice in horses, and that's specific for lice. When that is now discontinued, there will be nothing specific for lice that you can use in horses. So you're going to have to use a broad spectrum anthelmintic that will be full body and will obviously therefore tend to promote anthelmintic resistance, which is already an issue in horses and in other animals too, so in sheep and in cattle as well, but definitely a large problem in horses at the minute. In relation to costs, there are going to be costs to any professional involved, so both vets and SQPs. First of all, in reading and assimilating the guidance, which is available on the VMD website, but which is very lengthy, wordy, and quite, if I might say it, governmental in its format, with lots of references to legislation which you need to look up, and you know, you could end up with about 3 screens worth of legislation if you really wanted to look at that. So they're going to have to spend time looking for alternatives via the cascade. They do that already, but that's a well-trod path for a certain number of products, but this is new, so they're going to have to look at that. They're going to have to document all these decisions. They're going to have to inform their clients. We look at the problems with reduced pack sizes. In some cases, we're losing the large pack sizes, which means that a farmer, if he's got a herd of 400 cattle, he may have to buy, instead of buying 5 litres of something, he may have to buy 2 250 litres. So that, or 2 250 mils, or 2.5 litres. So that usually, if you buy smaller packs, that adds expense. For the smaller farmer or practice, if you lose small packs, they may have to buy a larger pack, which may lead to wastage if it passes its use-by date. And smaller practices, if they have to buy it in bulk, they might not use that particular, perhaps antibiotic, very frequently, and so you've wastage and disposal costs. Or a farmer might be encouraged, and certainly in an anthelmintic sense, might be encouraged to continue to use that, which again promotes the development of anthelmintic resistance. There is certainly going to be an increased cost for many small animal pet owners, because prescriptions will no longer be able to be fulfilled online in GB from GB companies. So at the minute, lots of vets will write prescriptions for certain long-term drugs usually, because they realise that the owner may not be able to afford the cost of buying them through their surgery, where they're more expensive. And so they write a prescription and they go online, and all of the UK online companies are based in GB. And I think there's been quite a lot of, those companies are now beginning to say they can't do that come the 1st of January, and so there's a lot of concern about that. And there's concern from vets too, because they care about their clients and their clients' animals. In addition, you'll know that the Competition and Marketing Authority are looking into the cost of veterinary services for small animals, and are likely to require vets to inform clients of their right to require or to inform pet owners that they could have a prescription, which is something that wouldn't be able to happen in Northern Ireland. Then we move on to communication, and as Mark has said, while we've had while there is information on the website, we have been working and trying to get that guidance amended to make it a little bit more user-friendly. So it's out there, but there's nothing clear and practical for vets on the front line, and there's been no direct communication with veterinary surgeons and veterinary practices, or farmers or pet owners from DAERA or the VMD. There are long-promised webinars, which we are awaiting. We're told they're imminent now. We had hoped that those would be something that would be interactive, that vets could attend and ask questions and have their questions answered. But I think that that's not going to be the case. From recent information we've had, those are going, as Mark says, just to be made available online when anybody wants to view them. And that's great, because in their own time they can do that. But there's no way to interact and ask questions there and then. There will be some form of where you can put in your questions, and then hopefully somebody will come back to you, or there will be something. But that seems quite a lot of work when it could be done face to face. So really, while we are definitely with the introduction of the two schemes in a better place than we were a year ago, we've still got a lot of uncertainty out there. And I suppose our recommendations really would be to get out Northern Ireland specific plain language operational guidance for vets, farmers, horse owners and pet owners as soon as possible, so that practices and vets can prepare in a consistent way. We need some form of early communication of product changes so that practices and businesses are informed before discovering that those products are unavailable at the point of ordering. So maybe, as we say, there could be stockpiling of the most frequently used GB products, which may continue to be in stock then in Northern Ireland for a number of months, and it may not actually come to a head until later in 2026. We need to increase direct engagement with frontline veterinary practices, not just representative bodies, and we would really like some in-person offerings there. And additionally, in conjunction with the British Veterinary Association, we suggest establishing an implementation coordination group to support the transition. This would be a government-led group, so we just feel it's important that government continue to take a bit of responsibility for this over the next year and don't just leave us hanging out there. And the group could support the workability of the schemes, and its purpose would be to share confidential category level supply risk signals so that we can plan ahead, agree shared clinical fallback pathways, providing a profession-led interpretation of what reasonable discretion means in practice, and coordinate communication to vets, SQPs, farmers, horse owners, pet owners to prevent avoidable disruption, cost shocks or welfare consequences. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. There's a lot of detail in there, so I really appreciate that. You're obviously hot off the press from being in London in regard to this. A couple of wee things that jump out straight away. If you don't mind me doing this one, I know it's been raised with me a number of times. Difficulties that have already arisen, particularly around horse lotions. So I'm going quite specific here, and these are veterinary medicines that would be made up locally by ingredients that are now no longer required, no longer available because of some of the trade restrictions. Are you aware of any instances of that? Or, so for instance, you talked about maybe using other products because you can't get a product, but I'm being told that some of these
products are no longer, well, they're
no longer available. The new versions don't work.
Yeah.
Too. So I mean, it's for one specific case, which just look at that was sweet itch in horses.
That would probably be the DAERA. That one as well would be used as a kind of an an insecticide or a repellent as well. I know lots of people make it up for fly repellents. That is no longer available. Yeah. And
I'm thinking in terms of that. So there's a piece in here where we talk about through the internal market scheme to avoid unacceptable suffering. And what I'm thinking is if there is a wider proliferation of medicines that are not available from the 1st of January, and we already have some examples, is there any definition or threshold that would give you confidence where the trigger would happen and that this internal medicines would work and that the speed of delivery and confidence in getting those to relieve the unnecessary suffering would happen?
That scheme should work for those kind of things that are only available in Great Britain. Yes, that scheme should work for that. Now, on the it really is veterinary discretion, and it's about you doing the diligent thing about checking to see if there's anything available anywhere else. If that's not working and your horse is suffering, then you have that, and that has to be recorded by the veterinary surgeon, and it should work.
This makes sense. And this is in terms of the logistics of that is obtaining something that is stored in Great Britain and then shipped across under that sort of certificate or accreditation.
There should be no certificate required in that case. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you're right. That puts a lot of onus on the vet to make sure that they've read through all the schemes and make sure which scheme slots in at the right time, and that they've recorded the right thing. I suppose putting it, okay, even though they're warehoused in GB, there is a warehouse here in Northern Ireland, and they're kind of trickled across at the moment as needed. So instead of just putting an order into a warehouse in Lisburn and getting it, suddenly you've to look to see, why can't we get it? Which scheme should we do? Have I documented the right scheme? Then you put in the order to the warehouse in GB. Then you get it. There's a lot of bumps in the road.
And there could be a number of vets all doing that at the same time, which is...
A vet in Fermanagh could be looking at exactly the same issue as a vet in County Down, as a vet in Antrim, all investing that amount of time to try to get the same product.
Yes.
It's a lot of time and effort and recording.
Very inefficient way of...
Very inefficient.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, where do these costs be passed on to? It's probably the owner at the end of the day, and that worries me.
Me too. And given the fact that the vets are very much unsighted in all of this because of the lack of information, I'm not sure how much progress has been made, because the last meeting that I had with the London officials in this, they were still stating in around the 20.
We're still, that's
This was
the
about
information.
6 months ago, and they're still in there. So one of the dividends of Brexit, sadly, has been you'd hinted at the redirected trade. What is the scale of that? And is there a fear that that could still be the route that is taken to alleviate any of the difficulties that are being faced?
Every veterinary medicine supplied to Northern Ireland, if it doesn't come through those schemes, it's completely redirected from GB now.
Okay.
Every. It has to be. So yes, completely redirected trade.
Incredible.
Put it simply.
Yeah, if it's warehoused at all in GB, it needs to be batch tested before release to Northern Ireland. So it's cost prohibitive.
And as you said, then where does the cost then get passed on to if it's going to be ultimately the consumer being the animal owner? Incredible. Have you any dates in the diary? Have you been given any confidence at all when you will be in receipt of the information and the finalised detail to be able to pass on to your members?
Well, I'm in the process of writing a members' information and pointing them in the direction of the information that is there, which I don't think is particularly user friendly, but it's what we have at the minute. I'm hoping that the webinars will be perhaps more practical and down to earth, but we haven't had sight of those yet. And again, we're now, a week away from the end of November.
Those dates, in terms of taking off the blinkers and letting us know what veterinary medicines are going to be discontinued, that's not going to happen.
But there isn't the time frame left. I mean, to now, but even to establish,
even to know those list of the critical medicines they think will be discontinued that are critical. We have no information on what those are, and I don't think it will be likely because of commercial incompetence.
Well, because of that commercial confidentiality, we will not know. In fact, we'll not know until they start to run out from the stockpiling. That may be second week in January, it may be July, it may be later on in December. We don't know. What we would really urge the government is, due to this stockpiling, it will run out at some stage. Please don't let them take a snapshot picture at the end of January to go, oh, well, everything's okay. There's no discontinuations, because that will not have happened yet because of that stockpiling.
And a final one from me. In terms of a risk assessment that you may or may not have carried out, is there an overriding risk that is going to be the critical one? Could it lead to increased levels of animal suffering? Or is it going to be the commercial piece in terms of rising costs, or has it been sort of written out in terms of a hierarchy of risks?
I think the highest risk is if we have an important vaccine that is discontinued or if it's the only one still there, it then becomes unavailable. So if you maybe have 3 different vaccines but only one remains, and there's a problem with the production in any way, which can happen quite a lot with vaccines, if that was to happen, then that could be critical. Think of salmonella, abortions, things like that, which in fact could have an impact on human health as well. So yeah, I think that would be my thinking on that.
qualified 25 years ago, I quickly become aware there's a reason why there's 2 or 3 manufacturers manufacturing vaccinations which vaccinate for the one disease, because every now and again they hit this hurdle in manufacturing process where they go out of stock, and the other one can almost pick up the slack. One thing I've noticed with the veterinary medicine directorate work, they say, oh well, if there's 2 choices and one of them disappears, you still have one choice. If they go out of stock, we're in trouble. So that is a risk, and almost a risk of that rapid supply of vaccinations. If there is an outbreak, there'll be a delay, and I don't know how long the delay will be. Will it be a week or 2 weeks until we actually get the product we need? So there will be that delay. Those are the big risks for animal suffering. They are maybe high risks but lower chance of them happening, whereas the other way around, the lower risk and the high chance of it happening is indeed the increased cost to farmers, the increased cost to horse owners, the increased cost to pet owners. And
we have actually lost, sorry to go back to another horse example, but we have already lost 1 flu and tetanus vaccine, so we have 2 left. So if one has a problem, the other one has to step up for the whole of Europe. So that is, if we have a flu epidemic, or just I suppose regular business for horse owners, horse racing, international competitions, everything has to be vaccinated. I think it's every 6 months now. So yeah, it's important.
And this is final. Then this isn't captured, and it's obviously the hurdles at the moment are significant enough without worrying too much about the future. But future divergence could be a significant matter, as the EU particularly rule in and out certain ingredients and medicines and stuff. Can that be captured in any future SPS agreement, do you think, or has it been set aside that it will not be? I think
we
that's
have
the case
been told that it's not included in the SPS negotiations, that this is not for discussion in the reset. Yeah, we were very disappointed to hear that. Yeah,
that was what I'd heard, and I was just wondering if there'd been any other discussions to say it could be picked up in the future, but my understanding is no. And that
I've not heard anything.
Concerns me that future divergence could be a significant problem.
Future divergence
in
Northern Ireland.
In Northern Ireland in terms of that availability, if the EU then enact legislative changes or regulatory changes to either medicines or ingredients.
Yeah.
This is a worrying point to me because, for example, pet owners here will open up their computer, look on and say, okay, I'm fit to get a certain veterinary medicine in GB. Why? And they come to the vet in Northern Ireland. Why can't I get it here? Or why do I have to buy a bigger size? Why do I have to spend more? Why is the price different? Why is it more expensive? All those things are going to happen. So divergence completely worries me. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And then vets are coming under considerable pressure through the CMA review as well. But I think they would appreciate somebody saying that this is not just another money-making scheme for veterinary surgeons. Mm-hmm. This is something that is being forced upon us. So there's a lot of pressure. So all of this and a worry that they're going to be doing the right thing, that they're making the right decisions, and that when somebody comes to inspect them, and DAERA are now recommencing veterinary practice vet meds inspections. So that's kind of a bit of a worry that somebody will make a mistake, and that's, these things around veterinary discretion and veterinary, I suppose just ethics is life or death. That if the Royal College decided they had done the wrong thing, then sometimes that results in you being struck off. Yes. You don't have a job anymore. So it all adds to pressure and the mental health issues that are going on and around vet shortages and everything else at the minute.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being so fulsome in your replies. Declan.
Thank you. Thanks very much for your presentation today. Sounds very much that the pharmaceutical companies and the VMD aren't communicating very well with the sector, and that is compounding the problem a lot. Would that be the case?
I think so. I mean, I think it's been a bit upfront about their role and the processes we're going through. I mean, we sit on the veterinary medicines working group, but have been bound by a confidentiality agreement there, so couldn't really say very much for a long time. So yes, it's and also because we are not confident in what what's been put out. We don't want to interpret that in any way, because the responsibility would then sit with us. It's about having a common interpretation of the regulations and how they will work.
And how many pharmaceutical companies will we be talking about?
Many pharmaceutical companies are there. I am unsure. 3 have declared their hand and told us what's going to happen. Out of, good question, 15 to 20, I would.
Some larger than others, it's supposed to be. Some will be very niche markets.
Yeah.
And what proportion of medicines would come here via the EU versus via Britain?
I think the general route was via Britain, so it would come from, a lot of them are manufactured in Europe, but they would have come and been wholesaled in GB and come that way, and that has, a lot of them now have rerouted already through the Republic.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the pack sizes. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit more? Is there a prospect of pack sizes changing?
Well, they've just disappeared, I think. So instead of perhaps, if we talk about anthelmintics, which you can buy in quantity for farming, they might be in 5 litre tubs, and now the 5 litre will no longer be supplied here. Now it might still be supplied in GB, and so you end up having to buy 2.5 litres, which usually is more expensive. The other thing is then, if you're a very small farmer and you can only buy 5 litres, and some people have, one company seemed to have got rid of a lot of the larger pack sizes, and another company's got rid of a lot of the smaller pack sizes. I wonder if they've been talking to each other. But anyway, so yeah, if you're talking about, somebody only wants 10 of something, but they have to buy 100, and if that's a vaccine, they're maybe not going to vaccinate. They'll maybe think, oh, well, I'll just give it a miss this year, I'll be okay. I've never had a problem. So yeah. And then if you've also got the wastage and the disposal costs, or there's inappropriate use, so using the same anthelmintic again and again and again is only going to build resistance in your flock or herd, and is not appropriate. Yeah.
Is that difference between the government's estimate of 10 to 15% products versus the Animal Health Distributors Association estimate before is a huge difference, and I can see how that could feed into uncertainty with the grace period as well, right in front as well. So thank you very much for answering the questions, and I think we should be making a representation to that is the working group, just around these issues.
Yeah, we can do that, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Declan. William?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. You're very welcome here. From what I can gather from you, the situation has the potential to increase the price of veterinary medicines, for number 1. Number 2, even at this late stage, what I gather is that we don't know for sure what medicines will be available and what will not, which is unfortunate, because at this late stage you'd think we should know that. The other question is, and a farmer myself, will warm drenches be affected, warmers and things like that be affected with the veterinary medicines situation?
Okay. In terms of the increased price, William, yeah, absolutely. That's all the costs associated with the vets. Changing, rerouting of products, costs associated with the vets. Spending a lot of time to say, okay, this isn't available, where am I going to get it? You could easily spend an hour trying to find where to get it and documenting all your costs. The fact that it's uncertain which is available and which is not, that's a really frustrating part for vets. As we said, 3 of the companies have declared their hand. As Declan quite rightly pointed out, that the Veterinary Medicine Directorate estimates are 10 to 15%. Only 3 of them will declare their hand, but that's the only evidence we have. And one of them's in around a level of about 30%, another one's in around a level of 40% from the 2 which are discontinuing. Will wormers be affected? Absolutely. wormers will be affected. In terms of looking at those companies, as Kirsten has pointed out, some of them are discontinuing the larger size. So if you are a farmer who has 300 or 400 cattle and you need a 5 litre and you have to buy 2 by 2.5 litres, that is going to be more expensive. So for the same amount of product on your farm, it is going to be more expensive to buy. If you are a farmer, for example, where I brought up in Fermanagh or Tyrone, and you have 10 cattle and you can't get a small enough pack size for your 10 cattle and you have to buy it for 50 cattle size, you know, that's 5 times the amount that you need. What are you going to do with it? You can't throw it away when it goes out of date. You're tempted to use it again and again and again until you use it up because you bought it. And the worst thing for any wormer resistance is use the same product again and again and again, because the only worm survive are those ones which are resistant to that. So you're adding pressure to wormer resistance. I'm worried that Northern Ireland will become that little centre for anti-parasite resistance compared to the rest of the UK or Europe, putting it on that wider scale. So yes, increased prices, yes, uncertain what products are unavailable, and yes, wormers will be affected.
The other quick question is, I would presume that some companies in England will be producing veterinary medicines to export into the EU. Would that not make it more available to Northern Ireland in that situation? I would have thought there has to be companies that are making product for the EU too.
GB. Correct. They are based in GB, so it'll have to be batch released before going into the European Union. Batch release checked, quality checked. Secondly, the marketing authorisation holder address has to be within the EU or Northern Ireland. If they don't have an address within the EU or Northern Ireland, not allowed to be sent. Many of them will withdraw.
And we are and part of the VMD's thinking around the 10 to 15% is that companies are revising their marketing authorisations, so they are changing those, they're going through that process. But we also know that just because there's a marketing authorisation there that means it could be supplied to Northern Ireland, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that it will be. Again, that will be a commercial decision for them. But they're holding on to it for intellectual property reasons.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, William. And Michelle, you're next.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. The questions that I was going to ask in relation to cost and so on have been covered. But it strikes me that the asks which you included at the end of your presentation don't seem to be unreasonable at all. You know, to be asking for operational guidance which is specific to Northern Ireland, early communication, product changes, working directly with vets. Given the timing that we're now in, there's an immediate kind of response required in relation to that, and I'm quite confident that you've articulated that throughout your time in the working group. What's the latest feedback that you have received with regards to those specific requests? Has it been a flat no, or wait and see, we've still got time?
We see the guidance is there. We did contribute to what we thought was going to be a frequently asked questions, a Q&A, which has come out as more guidance, a gov.uk document. We're also told, you know, there'll be webinars. Again, we've heard through other means that these are imminent, but we haven't heard that directly from VMD. What happens usually is we get an email today saying they're coming out tomorrow. But we do think they're not going to be interactive. VMD had suggested on a couple of occasions that they were going to come to Northern Ireland and hold a big meeting where people could come and hear about it and talk and even exchange within themselves, you know, and ask questions. But those have never did not materialise. In fact, we had a date for the last one sent out to our members and said, you know, make sure you come along, but it didn't materialise. So, and we're told that I think now, again, this is only information we've received, that this will just be put up online. There'll be no direct interaction. So what we worry about is there are people who perhaps are in one of the bigger corporate practices who will be well informed and well prepared through there, and they'll have a consensus of opinion of how to operating procedures for this. But the smaller practices out there, the one-man bands, may just be passing them by. So we wouldn't like them to be not informed, and not everybody is a member of a veterinary association either. So it's about getting out there to all veterinary surgeons by any ways and means. Newspapers, veterinary papers. We'll do what we can as well. But yeah, it's just that direct communication has been seriously lacking.
Obviously, information going into newspapers and online, so on, can be picked up by pet owners who then become quite anxious because with the lack of information, lack of detail, then obviously they do generally become concerned, particularly if their animal has maybe a particular specific treatment that's required, and they worry then about the availability. And I know that a number of members will obviously have received emails.
Yeah, so they're getting that information now from their suppliers saying that they can no longer do that. So it would have been good if that information had been out there so that they could think about and talk to their vet and work out what to do next. And we are told that some online companies may well move and have a Northern Ireland base, but again, that's not confirmed, or we're not.
And the implementation and coordination group that you'd referenced, obviously that's the continuation really sort of the working group post the grace period. What response have you received with regards to your request?
We haven't had anything as yet. We've asked for a meeting, an urgent meeting with Baroness Hayman in a recent letter, which has gone out, an open letter, which went out this week. We raised this at the House of Lords as well, at the Scrutiny Committee. I think they're supportive. But I think this will be a bit more, so the working group will include the pharmaceutical companies as well. So it'll be, all of the information should be in the room, and we can start maybe being proactive rather than reactive.
I think the purpose of this group would be really good, allowing a mobile, reactive, feeding in real time between industry, pharmaceutical industry, vets, government body, really sharing information, because if suddenly on the ground there becomes a product discontinuation, then vets can feed in really rapidly. So a nice agile mobile group sharing all the concerns, which really is what we ask.
Yeah.
Just very finally, you referenced just in passing the CMA and obviously the work that they're doing. I suppose what discussions have you had with them about the impact of the end of the grace period will have?
We have had no discussions with the CMA. The British Veterinary Association lead on that for vets, but we're told that VMD and DAERA have been talking to them. And but again, this prescription issue is, obviously there's a barrier there.
Of course, this is something which is completely out of your control, but will obviously have an impact.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the way it stands at the moment and the way we're operating at the moment, the CMA are putting forward recommendations to change that. We're going backwards. We're going to have less choice. We're going to have less availability. We're going to have increased costs. So the opposite to what the CMA recommends.
And pet owners here are going to feel they're disadvantaged in some way because they can't access this substantially cheaper medicines, because practices, because of the scale, they just can't supply medicines as cheaply as the online companies can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. In regard to that open letter to Baroness Hayman, would you be able to share a copy of that with the committee? Is that okay?
I'm sure we can.
Okay. That'd be really useful. Thank you so much. John, next.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you both for your presentation. Look, a number of things that I could have asked a question on have been covered, so I'm going to seek, if I may, some clarification on the supply route issue. Given that in order to market or sell veterinary products here, a company has to be based in Northern Ireland or an EU member state, could you recap on the supply route from the south of Ireland then? What the barriers are, if there are any, and why that can't be pursued more? Is that a supply of product issue? Is it a red tape issue? Is it because products came from GB originally to there? Could you just recap some of that supply route so that we're clear on an alternative, if it exists?
So if I understand correctly, so most of the product now is if it's manufactured in Europe, it will not go to GB, it will come to the ROI and come directly up. I think a lot of GB product can't be supplied into the EU at all, unless they have an EU
certificate or
marketing
whatever,
authorisation or an address in the EU, a registered office, and I think that's, in general, it's around auditing procedures and control, official controls.
So what are the opportunities then, if there are any, for products to be sourced in the south of Ireland and brought here? That exists then as a possibility?
It's already coming that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Go ahead.
It does exist. We can't. Again, back to my example of a pack size of maybe, okay, I'll say 1 litre, 2.5 litre, 5 litre. If we can only get the 2.5 litre, disadvantaging large and small farmers, we can't then default to get product from the Republic of Ireland, even if it is available as a 5 litre or 1 litre, because it's still available in Northern Ireland. It mightn't be available in the size that the farmer would like, but it's still available, so we can't default and go down the cascade and get it from another EU member state, because it's still available in Northern Ireland, just in the wrong pack size. So it's less availability, less choice. And
less choice is what I was going to recap.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. You've covered it, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah. That last bit, do you mind? Because that confused me a little bit, because I'd asked the question on the redirected trade piece. So there is redirected trade as a result, and my question I think earlier was, is there the scope for more redirected trade? But if you were answering that, if I heard you right, then you can't necessarily do that yet.
So,
or is it dependent on the product?
it is complicated.
Right, okay.
It is complicated. It's my understanding that if back to William's example in terms of wormers, if it's available in a 1 litre, 2.5 litre and a 5 litre, if a company, for example, drops the small size and the large size and it's only available as a 2.5 litre, it is available and licensed in Northern Ireland, so therefore that is the choice you have. If you drive across the border and it's available in a 1 litre and a 5 litre, that cannot be supplied to Northern Ireland because we still have a licensed product available. So the choice then becomes diminished and you only have that product available. I almost worry for people, for example, my father who farms in South Fermanagh, who then drives across the border and sees the pack size he wants, and doesn't understand the rules, that there is a Northern Ireland licensed product. You know, there is a worry there that you could get a product which isn't licensed and bring it into Northern Ireland completely unintentionally. Yeah. There is that worry as well. Does that impact quality assurance schemes? Does that impact Red Tractor? So if it's available in Northern Ireland in a pack size which may not be the desirable one, doesn't mean you can drive across the border and get it to the desirable pack size. It is licensed in Northern Ireland in that pack size, so therefore that's your choice.
This is really complex. It certainly doesn't sound like the best of both worlds to me.
If you have a packet of paracetamol and you can only get it in an 8-pack in Northern Ireland, just because it's available in a 4-pack and a 32-pack across the border doesn't mean you can get it. It's still licensed in Northern Ireland as an 8-pack, so that's your choice. And
the address in the bottom of the slip is going to be based in the UK, but it's available in is that right? Because that was the premise was at the start. Then obviously, as you rightly painted the picture for us, you take out the piece of paper and still it's to do with the licensing, but it's also the size of the scale of the products available in as well. Oh my goodness!
Yes. Not easy. It's complicated.
My head's sore. My head's sore. Okay, John, you finished on that?
Yes,
you content? Okay, Anya.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, folks, for coming in and briefing us today. And I suppose just to pick up on that last point, again, look, I'm born and bred in South Fermanagh myself, very close to Roslay. I know that Norbrook Laboratories operates just across the border in Monaghan. So for a farmer to travel from Roslay to Monaghan to purchase maybe a pack size and bring it back into the north, can they actually do that in terms of licensing?
It has to be Northern Irish licensed.
Okay. So just in terms of the supply chain from, I suppose, walk me through the supply route from purchasing medicines in the Republic and bringing them in the north. Whether that's done through a wholesaler or...
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Farmers in Northern Ireland must purchase Northern Ireland licensed products. So therefore, many of them are dual licensed and will have on the back of the pack, even more confusingly, that address, marketing authorisation holder, and it says ROI or EU if it comes from France or wherever else, and Northern Ireland as well. So it has to be Northern Irish licence. So yeah.
So it could work if that dual licensing is in place. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Look, I don't really have. Well, sorry. One more question from myself, Chair. And I suppose the medicines that are going to be impacted. Is there any possibility of the affected medicines, or is there the ability to have them manufactured within GB going forward?
Just to make sure I'm clear on this, the medicines which are affected and going to be discontinued, can they be manufactured in GB?
Within GB, yeah.
It's GB then is a third country in terms of Europe, so therefore they would need to have quality control batch checked, and they would need to have an address in EU or Northern Ireland. Now that address isn't just a PO box address, it isn't just a de facto office, it has to be a functioning office within NI or EU.
That address is then linked, I'm assuming, then to the licence as well? Yeah. No, that's okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark.
Sorry. This is a very live topic, obviously, and the 1st of January is coming relatively soon. Tom, sorry,
That's right.
I hadn't seen Tom indicating, sorry.
When we look at the farmers as close to the border and they can go over maybe and purchase and come back not knowing that they're not supposed to be doing this, does a farmer have to keep a record then of all the medicines that they purchase and where they purchased them?
Does a farmer have to keep these records?
Keep that record?
A farmer does have to keep all records.
Of where they purchased?
Of where they're purchased?
Yes, of what medicine they're using and where they purchase it. Because if they can only use stuff, medicines that's within Northern Ireland produced in a sense, or
as long as it's licensed within Northern Ireland, yes, all medicines purchased and goes on the farm has to be a record of, which includes, I'm thinking to the document that you include, all your batch number, amount purchased, everything of that is recorded and then subdivided out for use as well.
Has any assessment then been done of the extra cost that this will place, for example, on a medium farm business?
No. No work on that costs. Almost because we do not know, we only know what's going to happen for these two pharmaceutical companies who have told us which products they're going to discontinue. No cost exercise has been completed. It's very mobile, it's very blinkered, it's very, we just don't know what's going to happen to do that.
We haven't seen sight of any impact assessment at all.
We sit in the Veterinary Medicines Working Group and we sign a non-disclosure agreement to sit in that group. And then the VMD have told the pharmaceutical companies, they've gathered all this information, they said they're not going to continue on, but yet they don't share that information within the group either.
Hopefully you're not going to cloud my head here now when I ask this question. So the bit that I think is missing is the final list of Northern Ireland veterinary licensed medicines. If that was known, then you would know that you'd be closer to knowing the definitive list of products that may be discontinued or unavailable or hard to get. Is that fair?
Well, we don't. Well, yes, but you could have, as I say, we definitely have information that a marketing authorisation is no guarantee that it will be continued to be supplied. Again, it would be a commercial decision. It may be a small amount. It's not worth it. It's not whatever. But they want to hold on to that intellectual property, so they get a marketing authorisation for it.
And the Northern Ireland veterinary licensed products will all be in line with the EU licensing and regulation, not GB.
Which they've never been more closely aligned, the GB and EU regulations anyway. There's not a, there was a change in regulation. So was it last year, and they've never been more closely aligned. So.
Never been more closely aligned? Okay. Well, that's good if they walk in step. But then we're sort of always on the periphery because we have no say in it, as usual. John, did you indicate there, or were you happy?
No, just going to comment though, now that you've given me the opportunity, that I would...
I'm not doing it again.
Very generous today, isn't there?
Yeah, indeed, and I hope it continues. No, it's a thought that, any costs incurred in assessing the consumer cost of this, I hope would lie with DAERA, because it was in that jurisdiction and that parliament that the entire process that led to this began. I'm not making a political point, I'm making a practical point. The process that got us to where we are today, from 2016 onwards, was begun and masterminded and pursued by GB government.
Well, not the ones there. To be fair to the Labour government's not the ones there at the moment.
No, they didn't. No, of course no. But the government itself, and you would like to think they would incur the costs of trying to assess the outworkings of some of this, rather than it coming out from existing budgets within our own department.
Okay.
I think, because it's a Westminster responsibility, I think that's why we would like that group to be set up, so that we're not just left hanging if something did happen and people say, well, got all these.
Yeah, and the point as well, Chair, that the responsibility sits there as well.
Okay, members, are you content? As content as we can be. Okay.
Well,
thank you so much. And if there are any ongoing issues, please feel free to contact the committee, because we genuinely will be really interested in this as the days and weeks unfold.
Just who should we direct that
There's
communication to?
We'll contact. We'll send you an email, and then you just come back through the email address. There is a committee email inbox that is monitored 24/7.
Yes, 24/7. And we're going to ask them to forward that letter.
Yes, and that letter that we'd agreed. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, members. Any Declan, you had raised a point about I think it was the working group at DAERA?
The veterinary medicine director. I think we should.
Veterinary medicine director.
We're not going to get them before the committee before the grace period ends, but we definitely should. I think we should write to them anyway, and
yes,
highlighting the concerns, and maybe try to get an update from them maybe the new year as far as work programme in the house.
Yep. Yeah. Intent with that. Members, any other actions that members want to take from that?
Happy with that.
Yes. Happy enough, Clerk?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Members, we are now moving on to agenda item 8, Departmental Oral Evidence Session on the monitoring round, December monitoring round. I now refer to page 77 for the briefing paper that sets out the outcome of DAERA's internal considerations for the December monitoring round and provides details of the return issued to the Department of Finance on the 20th of November. So I'm going to welcome the following officials to brief the committee. We have Mr. Roger Downey, Finance Director, Mr. Declan McCarney, Deputy Finance Director, and Ms. Nuala, Hennessy, Head of In-Year Finance Planning Branch. After the session, we're going to obviously take some questions, hopefully. I'm sure the members will have done some reading of the pack, so if you want to go ahead and give your presentation, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to brief the committee today on the December monitoring round. This exercise has replaced the October and January monitoring rounds, which usually take place during the year. This is the last monitoring round in 2025-26 and will be used to set the final budgets for this financial year, which the Department will report against in the provisional outturn exercise after the year end. DAERA's return was submitted to DOF last Thursday. The Department has no resource DEL or capital DEL bids in this exercise. However, we do have one non-cash ring-fenced resource DEL bid for depreciation of $500,000. On resource DEL reduced requirements, there is a non-earmarked one of $4.9 million arising from the delay in filling vacancies. There is also an executive earmarked one of $3.1 million on Peace Plus, which is managed by SEUPB. In addition, there is a Treasury earmarked one of $2.9 million as the timing of staff appointments has been slower than anticipated. On capital DEL reduced requirements, there is one of $0.8 million arising from slippage in a lease at the Lauren facility to 2026-27. In terms of technical issues, there are a number of de minimis transfers that net to 0.4 million resource DEL and 0.2 million capital DEL out of DAERA to other departments. Turning to annually managed expenditure, or AMI, an 108 million non-cash resource AMI budget cover has been sought for a potential technical accounting adjustment in line with International Accounting Standard 37 on provisions and contingent liabilities in relation to Maboy. This approach is consistent with the one taken last year. 0.6 million non-cash resource AMI budget cover has also been sought for a potential technical accounting adjustment in line with International Accounting Standard 37 in relation to the AFB data breach. The accounting treatment of these issues will be considered at the year end, and at this stage there is no commitment to disburse these or any other amounts. More details are set out in the written briefing that was provided to the committee earlier this week, and we're happy to take any questions on it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. The first question for me is in around the non-earmarked 4.9 million resource DEL. And is all of that down to the fact that the staff cost budgets aren't being met due to the delay in filling vacancies across the department? And if that is the case, then are there any areas of the department at significant risk due to lack of being able to fill posts? And then is there a knock-on effect in terms of the service delivery of the department?
So I suppose although a significant number of staff have moved into DAERA so far this year, and more will join before the end of March, full year costs will not be incurred in this year, and many other staff who were projected to be in post this year will not now be in until next year. So that's why the savings have arisen. I suppose the business plan, when it was being developed for this year, it took into account how likely, given the staff resourcing and the vacancy position, how likely work would be taken and what wouldn't be taken forward. So that was all factored into the business plan that was agreed earlier this year. So I suppose an assessment was made on how likely staff would get in. At that stage, we had money that if more came in, we'd be able to fund them and employ them. That hasn't turned out to be the case, just with the passage of time. We also have leavers as well. You'll be aware of the age profile in the department. So a high number of staff have also left during the year, and that creates underspends in staff cost budgets as well.
Did you use the word savings in there, Roger, in that unspent? I'm not sure if I heard that right.
I may have used. I suppose those sort of terms are interchangeable. If you're having an underspend, it's like a savings, so it's not an extra
unintended
cost.
Consequence of being able to fill the post, I suppose.
Yes, we're not being proactive in not filling posts to generate savings.
No, I guess yes. Well, that's good news. But it is a difficulty filling the post. That's yes. An ongoing difficulty.
Yes, it is.
So I'm trying to unpick if there are any areas of business which are particularly vulnerable or at risk. So there was an article, particularly out the west, in regard to it's a news article, and it was in and around the Crown Office in Thomas Street. There's 17 vacancies. There's 20 unfilled vacancies in Dungannon. And I'm just wondering, are there any geographical difficulties, or are there any areas of business which are particularly suffering and becoming vulnerable?
I suppose I wouldn't have the detail in specific areas and offices. I know there's quite a high number of vacancies registered with Nix HR, and there's lots of competitions have been underway, and we've been able to draw off that during the year. There's other competitions in train as well. So it all depends on the vacancies and the grades in a particular office at a particular point in time, and then when the staff become available coming off these competitions. So all these things, it's difficult to get them to marry up.
Have you got a top level figure of the amount of vacancies that still exist then? With a value obviously of 4.9 million, but
we do. I think it's 838 is the latest figures that registered with Nix HR. So
838 vacancies.
838
full-time equivalents.
FTEs, yes, full-time equivalents.
Yeah, that I can't imagine that doesn't have an impact on the the output and probably the pressure on existing staff too. I think that might be a concern.
Yes, I suppose we don't expect all those staff to come in all at the same time, so they're all registered. It all depends when, as I said, when the competitions become available and staff come into post, because we wouldn't have enough money to fund 838 staff from the 1st of April every year. But you take into account churn as well, with people leaving on to go to other departments, to retire, to move out of the civil service. So.
Do we have a cost for it? Do we have agency then? Do we employ through agency? And
yes, we do have.
Yeah? What is that? Is that not picked up in the figure of 4.9? Is that already included?
It's included. So we look at the staff cost budget in its entirety. So it includes all the staffing costs of civil servants, the FTs, but it includes agency staff as well.
Do you have a figure for that?
I don't have that broken down.
Do you get us a figure
yes,
for?
Yeah,
for that. I appreciate that. And then just the final one then for me, and forgive me for this because I know it's HM Treasury money as regard to the Windsor Framework staffing. There's a line in there projected to be £8 million higher than 24-25. Which it confuses me a little bit because I suspect there are significant staff shortages there too.
Yes, well, there's 2.9, so we were projecting to get 2.9 million's worth of staff in this year whenever we were bidding to Treasury for that money. So we have got a lot of staff in to cover those posts, yes. And £8 million more has been incurred this year to cover that, but not the full 10.9 million more, so that's why there's a 2.9 million.
Okay, thank you.
And that goes back to Treasury.
Okay. Appreciated that, thank you. What's it say? Okay, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and Roger, thank you, and your colleagues as well for the detail provided here. I'm staying on this 4.9 million, just to clarify if I may, this is described as the situation at autumn, which is half of the year. So if this is the half-year cost and therefore represents a 10 million almost underspend in staff resources, or is that the cost projected until the end of the year?
That's the cost projected for the end of the year. So this is the last monitoring round of the year, so this will confirm our final budget for the year. So when we do this exercise, we go right out across the whole department. We asked all business areas to give assessment of the staff in post, because we get reports on that each month, and also their projections of staff that will come in of various competitions between now and the end of the year, and those where we know there's going to be leavers, if retirements or whatever.
Much closer to a full year position than a half year position.
Yes,
okay. That clarifies that, and thank you. The questions from the Chair on the impact on business areas I get, although I'll probably up to those business areas to identify to this committee where there may be risks to service delivery, and I don't expect you to have that information to hand. However, I'm keen to know, is that so that we get a picture of how service delivery might be impacted? Is that 4.9 million significantly higher than previous years at this point in the financial year? Do you know that?
Well, I suppose it's a moving figure. We would have different staff costs in different years. We would have got some extra money for the increase in employers' national insurance costs as well. So we also have more. We've had a significant amount of recruitment this year. So there's different budgets. There's I suppose the executive staff costs, and then there's the treasury staff costs. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult to pin that down.
Do you know whether there's a headline figure, and I'm hoping there isn't, by the way, if there's a headline figure around that, or headline, if you want to round that, is that double what it was last year and the year before, or is it a figure that has been reported previously, that sort of £4 or £5 million staff underspend?
I don't think we had a reduced requirement on staff last year.
Okay.
I think we're also, obviously there's the wider block position on pressure, so we don't want to be holding on to money on an optimistic assessment that staff are going to come in. We would rather, this is the last chance to declare it, so if that helps out the pressures across the block, then we're content to do that, as opposed to hold on in the and maybe potentially.
What I'm trying to get to is, do we know if that figure is something that's rising year on year, that 4.9 million?
No, I can say it isn't rising year on year, especially because staff costs increase year on year because of inflation, pay awards, higher national insurance contributions. So it's just, I suppose, it's the nature of this particular year.
Recruitment, okay.
Of where we are, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
Any other questions, members? Sorry, Anya and then Thomas. Sorry.
Yep. Chair, just a quick one from myself, Roger, in relation to the £3.1 million in Peace Plus and the reduced requirement that's been reported. Have we, or does the department know what factors actually that SEUPB have identified that has brought them to that conclusion from a reduction from the initial projected figure?
We asked that.
Yeah, there's a number of factors for that easement, working with the business areas across the 5 investment areas, and I suppose some of the reasons there are state aid and UK subsidy queries, adjustments in delivery plans and keeping projects and budgets, and also some changes in delivery partners have slowed things off in terms of the reason for the easement at this stage of the year.
Okay, and could you just elaborate, I suppose, on, you had mentioned new delivery partners there, and what was the point before that, Declan? Second point?
So it was adjustments to delivery plans to keep projects in budget, were some of the reasons the business areas came in terms of the 5 investment areas, in terms of the reasons for the slippage.
Okay, and I suppose from a departmental point of view, what support has the department been offering rural groups in terms of utilising this money and making them aware that, you know, this pot of money had been available?
Yeah, well, I suppose there's various business areas within the department that work closely, and I suppose the department is the accountable department, but SUPB is the managing authority in terms of managing them programmes on the ground with them delivery partners. I think it's a common issue across all Peace Plus programmes, and I think there's SUB we're going to work closely with project partners in the new year to adjust work plans to make sure that the money is spent out on them various investment measures.
Thank you. And just a final one for myself, Chair. In relation to Treasury earmarked funding, there's mention of 0.8 million slippage in relation to a lease at Larne. What does that allude to, Roger?
So I suppose there's work going on at the points of entry. The capital bills, it's being undertaken by DAERA on the constructions. So there's a lease required for that at the Larne site, and they're not in a position to sign that this year. Whenever we were bidding for that money, it was anticipated that lease would be signed in this financial year. Just due to the nature of construction, that's going to slip into next year, so we don't need that capital. So that's been eased back to Treasury.
Thank you, Chair.
Just to go back before we go to Thomas, just on that EU Peace Plus piece, Declan, if you don't mind, when you refer to an easement, is that a final loss of the ability to spend that money? Does that go back, or what happens to that?
So there's various investment measures there with a total overall allocation of millions of pounds, so it'll roll forward into
okay.
You know, push into future years in terms of until get it spent.
Okay, thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I understand the department relies quite a bit on a number of agency staff. What impact does then that have on the staffing budget, given that agency staff normally are come at a higher rate than what a person employed by a department is?
I suppose we look at the staff cost budget in its entirety, covering both full-time civil servants and agency staff. I know where there's difficulties getting staff recruited in on a full-time basis, then business areas can go out to get agency staff because the work still needs to get done. So I suppose to answer your question, it all comes out of the one pot. And if staff get recruited permanently, then there's less need of agency staff going forward. So I suppose that's just reviewed by business areas on a continual basis. We do that formally as part of each monitoring round during the year, as well as the beginning of the year whenever we get our budget agreed by the executive.
Okay, no? Okay, members, any other questions?
No, it's okay.
No? Okay. Well, we'll let you off since it's easy since it's Christmas. So, no, thank you very much. It's nearly Christmas.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your time today. Okay, members. Today, we're going to move on to agenda item 9 now, which is the local councils in Northern Ireland feedback on waste and odour complaints. So members will note at pages 22 to 25 of the table papers a document summarising the responses from 8 councils in relation to the committee's questions relating to odour control. Members, as part of our due diligence regarding odour and waste complaints that we have received, the committee took a briefing from RAISE on the 18th of September regarding the sniff test used by the NIEA and other authorities across neighbouring jurisdictions. The committee then issued correspondence to firstly, the NIEA to seek further information on target number 12 in the NIEA business plan, which includes contributing to the development of odour guidance with a target date of the 31st of March 2026. And we considered the response at our meeting on the 9th of October. We also wrote to the Shared Environmental Services, the SES, regarding any role it has in odour assessment done by councils or the NIEA. We considered the response at our meeting on the 6th of November. The committee also raised concerns that as it also falls to local councils to investigate complaints, there was not one common approach to tackling this issue across Northern Ireland. We agreed to write to all 11 councils querying the processes that they follow on odour assessments. In fact, it appears much of the processes of investigation are standard, as is concerned that self-testing is unreliable. In addition, there does appear to be some shared concerns regarding duplication of work and communication between investigating bodies. I want to record our thanks to Nick for putting this together. Are members content to note, or does anyone have anything significant or note that they want to add at this time? And there are a lot of responses in your packs. Members content? We can revisit this, and I suspect we will be revisiting it because we've had a lot of communication from constituents raising their own concerns. Okay, agenda item 10 is the LCM on biodiversity beyond natural jurisdiction. That's a bill. Members are referred to table paper starting page 43 to the draft legislative consent motion for the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Bill, which was introduced in the House of Commons on the 10th of September. The LCM was led in the Business Office on the 24th of November, and as the clock is ticking for our scrutiny, it is in the pack for any initial thoughts at this stage. The bill will provide the legal framework for the United Kingdom to fully implement its international obligations under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biology, diversity of areas beyond natural jurisdiction, shortened to the BBNJ agreement. The bill amends the Marine and Coastal Access Act 2009 and the Marine Works Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations 2007 to align the marine licensing regimes with the BBNJ EIA process in respect of activities in areas beyond national jurisdiction. The legislation operates on a UK-wide basis, and therefore it is appropriate for a Westminster bill to introduce the provisions rather than an Assembly bill. The committee will now have 15 days in which to scrutinise the bill, and as part of our due diligence we could suggest a briefing. Would members be content that we then seek a briefing on that? Yep. Maybe, or did you get some detail? Written or oral, members? Written or oral? Do we have the time to seek an oral briefing? 15 days.
It would be tight, you see. So.
Yeah.
Can we suggest maybe we get it written, and if we need further information, then ask.
Yep. Members content with that?
An oral.
Okay. We'll get a written briefing then. You okay? Is that all right there? Brilliant. Agenda item 11, the SL1, the Farm Sustainability Standard Amendment Regulations, referred to table paper starting page 88 for this item. The Department intends to make this SR, which makes miscellaneous amendments to the SR 2025 number 165, the Farm Sustainability Standard Regulations, Northern Ireland 2025, which after some consideration, we agreed on the 6th of November that we had no objection subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules. However, a drafting error has come to light, which requires an amending SR as the SR 2025 number 165 that made amendments to the Commission implementing Regulation 809/2014 Article 74 failed to fully remove reference to negligence. The SR will be led before the Assembly under the negative resolution procedure, and it's anticipated that will come into operation on the 1st of January. The Clerk has pointed to a further typographical error which is being fixed by the Department in consultation with the Business Office. It was good to have eagle eyes on these things. Are you agreed the Department proceed to make the SR and we can then consider it and the SR report in due course? Thank you, members. Agenda item 12, correspondence. Members, I propose to deal with correspondence by exception. There is a correspondence memo for reference at page 133 of the pack, and I'm asking if members are content to note the correspondence as presented. If members have any comments, I'll summarise the content of that particular correspondence and open it up for comment. There's also one item of correspondence from an individual that if members are content, the clerk will respond to on behalf of the committee because the committee is not in a position to assist the correspondent. Content, members?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, members. Okay, members, agenda item 13 is the forward work programme. Refer to page 276 to 277 of the pack for the forward work programme. Are you content that it's published? Agenda item 14, there's no 19. Members, our DUP colleagues have a motion on recognising the importance of food security in the Chamber for debate on Monday. Also a reminder that the committee is hosting an informal event next Tuesday lunchtime to discuss TB. Officials will send out time and room details on Monday. Members content? Okay.
Yep.
Are there any other items of business? No. Okay. Date and time of the next meeting, members. It'll be on the 4th of December at 10 a.m. in room 21. We will be hosting the minister. So if members have any broad topics, they would be happy for the minister to see them in advance. I'm sure you would. Please forward them to the team by 2 p.m. tomorrow, and they will forward to the department. And this obviously doesn't in any way restrict members on the day from asking questions of our minister. We will give them full scrutiny on the day. And is that it, members? Anything else? Okay, the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Sure, the minister will be well briefed too.